Hello Indie Game fans, December's always a weird month of new releases due to the holidays and Game of the Year season, so I actually don't recommend developers to release the game in the month, but these developers are still trying, with one particular possible Game of the Year contender still to come. So let's begin with Diesel Legacy The Brazen Age, a curious looking fighting game that is doing something different, being a 2v2 title with 3 lanes so to speak, and kind of looks like a side-scrolling beat-em-up. However, it plays and controls like a fighting game, and even if you are defeated in a match, you can play as a ghost to try and help your teammate, all with an awesome art style and will provide something different. My mind immediately went to the Nob epilogue when I saw Idle Colony, since it opens with a similar shot of a fountain of stuff spewing out, and similarly is an incremental title, only instead of controlling knobs as they get wealthy, has you collecting and merging fruit together instead. You are controlling strange humanoid creatures of various sizes, and looks to have some automation style elements as well, where all these many years after adventure capitalists, clicker heroes and cookie clicker, the appeal of the incremental game is still there for me. This video is brought to you by Luma Island, an epic co-op action-adventure game with farming elements, which is brimming with possibilities. You are exploring the mysterious Luma Island, which is filled with strange creatures known as Lumas, being able to capture or hatch your own from Luma eggs to create companion creatures who assist in producing Luma essence, which can be used for building. You are constructing your very own homestead, starting with a humble caravan and working your way up to a grand manor that you can call home, having to venture out to explore, gather resources, craft, fight, fish and more in the process. There is a variety of different locations to explore, including ancient temples and dangerous spider caves filled with puzzles, treasure, and a secret or two, mixing real-time action with the life sim aspect of the game. Critical to all of this are the professions, of which there are 7 you can choose from, such as cook, brewer, treasure hunter, blacksmith, fisherman, jewelry crafter, and archaeologist, each with unique quests and objectives, along with a crafting system and upgradable tools to make you better at said profession. There is co-op support where you and your friends can adventure, explore and build together, which looks like fun, although it is also perfectly playable solo and does have a wonderful art style as well, looking like the next big hit. Where this game releases today on Steam and is Steam Deck compatible, so check out the game for yourself via the link in the description below. A long-in-development action-adventure title named Fountains also makes it to release, looking kind of like Zelda but might have some Souls-like influence as well, due to what appears to be a bonfire set in a world filled with mystery and danger. You play as a hooded stranger recently imprisoned by a tyrannical regime, now having to fight his way out to escape and uncover the secrets of this war-torn empire. As you navigate through the maze-like interconnected world, you encounter a variety of characters, both friendly and hostile, and will have to master the high-skill combat to defeat punishing bosses and overcome challenging obstacles. Of course, there will be new abilities and tools to aid you in your quest, having some impressive pixel art as well, so I hope combat and controls is tight and responsive, since if so, it might be pretty enjoyable. Here's a weird one in Spire Horizon Online, an honest-to-goodness indie MMORPG, so I have my reservations on this, given how player population and keeping up with content and updates is an issue even for Blizzard, but you cannot fault them for trying, with the interesting parts of this game being that you play as a skeleton on a quest to find your capybara friend. Yes, that is about as weird and random as it can get, and while there is no gameplay in this trailer, visually it looks alright from screenshots and has a massive world to explore in the Kingdom of Etheria. There are different regions to go to, each with its own unique challenges and adventures, from the harsh desert landscapes of the Crimson Dunes to the perilous snow-covered mountains of the Frozen Peaks. There will be 25 unique classes to choose from, including Berserker and Assassin, which seems like a lot, and over 150 types of monsters, a main questline and more. This developer also made Spire Horizon, which released in February 2024 and is modestly successful, where this game looks much more ambitious, so let's see how it does. The developer of this game says that it's for fans of Katana Zero, so of course Ion Shift got my attention, being a fast-paced 2D action platformer, but in which you play as an alien creature having to kill and destroy everything in its path in order to escape. You are trapped on board a gigantic spaceship filled with soldiers, deadly turrets, laser drones, traps, hazards and more, having to make your way through and take out your enemies. Movement and platforming in this game looks cool, since the creature can climb on walls and ceilings, also having a very handy looking dash move that allows you to evade enemy attacks or move so fast that the drones don't get a chance to lock onto you. Critical to all of this is that there is friendly fire, so your enemies can end up killing each other, a fact which you need to exploit in order to make it through safely, requiring both precision and skill. The sandbox-like arenas allows you to flex your creativity when it comes to tackling enemies, also having creative throwable items, so the combat puzzle aspect of the game looks well thought out and certainly looks like fun. From the developer of Roki comes Mythwrecked Ambrosia Island, a self-styled friendem-up adventure that combines exploration, puzzle solving and emotional storytelling. You play as Alex, a rookie backpacker taking a break from modern life but ends up shipwrecked on Ambrosia Island, a beautiful, long-forgotten place that is the home of the gods of Greek mythology. However, things are not all pleasant and wonderful in this paradise, since the gods have lost their memories and are having somewhat of an identity crisis, so it is up to you to help them recover their memories and reconnect with each other by finding and returning their lost treasures. You will have the help of your handy-dandy Ambrosia Dex device, allowing you to track who you have met, or even to use the radar signal to find the lost treasures, treasure hunting style, lifting the curse that has been placed upon the island in the process, and to ultimately find your way home. This is intentionally designed to be non-violent, with a focus on exploration and puzzle solving, along with more adventure or visual novel inspired elements like dialogue with characters, and thus have a non-linear narrative which unfolds depending on your actions, looking like it's for fans of the genre. Yes, Entropy Survivors is yet another bullet heaven roguelite title, but it looks pretty alright, and has the interesting idea of the character being a frog sitting in a mech, as they work together to take down the forces of entropy itself. This mixes the ranged attacks of the frog with the melee sword swings of the mech, giving you both options, but also allowing you to do weird stuff, such as throwing your shotgun at enemies when you are out of ammo, where the sheer variety and range of weapons available looks like fun. This is set in the same universe as their other title, Shoulders of Giants, which I believe was an Epic Games Store exclusive for a little while and didn't do so hot on Steam, so cynically, this might be a repurpose of those assets and hopping onto the bullet heaven trend despite how played out it is, but there have been notable bright spots in this space like Karate Survivor and Temtem Swarm as of late, so this might just turn their fortunes around. A cool looking detective adventure game is The Midnight Crimes, one that kind of looks like those old Telltale games like The Wolf Among Us, but is from an indie team. This is a point-and-click detective adventure game that promises to deliver a rich narrative experience where you take on the role of Benjamin Layton, a war veteran and retired private detective, as he navigates the dark and gritty city of Midnight Cove. Our hero lost his family a few years ago in a tragic and brutal murder committed by an unknown assassin who was never found. So, racked by guilt, he lives his life at the bottom of a bottle. That is, until a new case comes around where he needs to find a missing child. This game has a semi-open world, so you are free to explore and follow the threads as you investigate the case, but have to be aware of your stress level, since that will affect your actions and precision. Also having to keep your reputation and eloquence in mind, with the text on the Steam page writing stress, eloquence and reputation in all caps, so I'm guessing that it is some sort of in-game statistic that you need to be aware of. There's also a whole red string pegboard thing in your office where you can visualize the case and connect clues together, all with an awesome art style that really rounds off the package. A title that I have mentioned a number of times in the past is Puropu Defense Squad, a wacky looking third-person action tower defense title in which sentient objects known as props must defend their existence against human invaders from Earth. As a member of the Puropu Defense Squad, your mission is to protect the Extractor, the lifeblood of your civilization, at all costs. There are a number of playable characters with different special abilities which affect the gameplay, having progression systems like new talents to unlock and items to get. Enemies here also border on the wacky, since there are farmers, policemen, flying units, hippie healers, and Special Agent 74, and a cheeky reference to Hitman, each providing a new challenge for your towers and traps to handle. There is co-op support for up to 4 players and has various difficulty levels for each stage in the campaign, looking like a wacky good time in line with titles like Orcs Must Die, so if you want more of that, do pick this up. A fun looking and fast-paced snowboarding racing game is Slopecrashers that leans more on the arcade side of things as compared to simulation, in which animals make their way down the slopes and pull off sick tricks along the way. Each animal has their own unique abilities and characteristics, which are used to chain together tricks, filling your combo meter and redeeming it at the right time for an extra speed boost to go even faster. It has some kart racing inspired elements, since your opponents can use items to attack you through explosions or moles digging up the ground, also having different levels, boards and gliders, and seems like a pretty decent one of these. The last time I talked about this game, it had a targeted release of December 2023 and was pushed by almost an entire year, but I'm not sure if CRUDE will make it to release since the developer is awfully quiet about marketing and promoting the game. This is supposed to be a Souls-like platformer with Metroidvania elements in which you play as a displaced MMA fighter from New York, transported into a dark fantasy world and has to find a way home. The highlight here has to be the art style, where I don't quite have the words to describe it, so if you know what this is, please let me know in the comments below, where the characters and enemies almost look like some sort of 3D model or toy action figure, but is not quite claymation, having some amount of limit to the frames of animation, giving it an otherworldly feel. Somehow, our hero is able to fire off lightning and fireballs from his hands as he battles skeletons, demons and giant serpents, and might be kind of neat. Just a quick one here in Beat the Humans, a pixel art turn-based tactics title where you play as the aliens fending off human colonizers in a reverse of traditional roles in video games. However, the aliens here kind of look like orcs and do have access to advanced technologies like mechs as well, although they are supposed to be technologically inferior to the human army. There's also a space map, so you have to capture and defend multiple planets, looking like there's more than meets the eye when it comes to this game and should be cool. An interesting looking survival game is Heat Death Survival Train, essentially Snowpiercer the game in all but name, in which you are building your own battle train and exploring a frozen world. I guess this is kind of a new idea in the survival game space, since while there are wintry titles like The Long Dark, I don't believe there is a train focused one, unlike in other genres like Unreal, where the train is more than just a mode of transportation. It's your shelter, your vehicle, and your weapon as well. You will use it to face off against hostile drones and deadly storms as you traverse through the world, looking to discover its secrets. Interestingly, the train construction elements look neat, since you're able to build rather contemporary looking train cabins, almost like a house on tracks, complete with glass walls, which is kind of Scandinavian in design or something, but in the post-apocalypse. It is not all aesthetic however, since objects like power generators need to be installed, along with heavy weapons and more to fight off enemies. You can also stop the train and go on foot to explore, stumbling upon bunkers and other areas of interest, kind of taking the Subnautica concept but applying it to a different theme and looks promising as well. Now this next title has a tremendous amount of hype behind it, since Urban Strife is an old-school post-apocalyptic survival RPG that has more in common with the Neverwinter Nights and OG XCOMs of the world, even if it does use the overdone trope of zombies. But still, there could be something neat here. You play as an amnesiac survivor who has been rescued by a group of kind-hearted individuals, having to help out by rebuilding and fortifying the camp through scavenging for resources, having to be concerned with not only the zombies but rival factions as well. Combat here looks pretty standard since there are a variety of guns and weapons at your disposal, each costing AP to use, with different weapons having their own pros and cons, like shotguns for close quarters combat to sniper rifles for long range attacks. So far, so standard. This also has a Fallout VATS-like system of being able to target body parts, possibly using your weapons to cripple or slow down your enemies by shooting at their legs instead of the head, mixed in with melee combat options as well. There are 3 main factions in the city vying for control, namely Army Rebels, a zombie-loving cult, and a gang of bikers, where you can choose to ally with any of them, but none of them are the good guys, so to speak, leading to morally grey choices that need to be made. There are survival elements, so you can grow food in your base, for example, but are under the constant threat of zombies and humans alike. The game also looks promising since the NPCs are supposed to be fully simulated, having their own lives and convictions, which you need to account for when planning your next move. Do note that despite it not being stated on the Steam page, the press releases for this game indicates that it is an early access release, which is expected given the scope and ambition of the game, so let's see how this stacks up to something like Project Zomboid. Of course, me being me, I do love the look of Chrysalis, a pixel art roguelite tower defense game in which you are exploring procedurally generated worlds, growing deadly gardens and possessing animals, all in service of protecting the Chrysalis, which needs time to unleash its cleansing power to destroy your enemies. You are controlling a wisp which can possess animals and apply elemental spirits to it, such as combining a scorpion and a frog, or imbuing a ram with fire, having an awesome pixel art style as well, and will be for fans of the genre.
Come forth, adventurer. The continent is ravaged by war and disease.
Chaos
Reigns free. Bandits, heretics, and undead roaming the land. Join us in our righteous cause to bring order to the land.
There are quite a number of tactical CRPGs next month as well, one of which is Dustgrave, a Sandbox RPG. As the title suggests, you are free to roam in this open world, creating your very own character and forging your legacy, where everything you do affects the world and its people. The game's narrative changes based on your choices and the people that you help, making your adventure in the world of Dustgrave unique to you, especially since, at least from the trailer, you will be able to walk the path of the righteous or the wicked, playing the role of the classic hero or that of a scoundrel and thief. Combat here is turn-based in that old-school style, but doesn't appear to be bound to a grid, having a variety of skills and items that you can use. There is a stealth system, so you can sneak around and steal things, or even assassinate characters, having some immersive sim elements since it gives you options to tackle any scenario, with different factions that you can join, and just gives you variety, just like a sandbox should. The concern here is the narrative, or the main driving force of the story, if there is one, and will also be an early access release, so there will be space to grow. A very pleasant game is Garden Trills, yes, spelled that way, in which you play as a tiny sparrow exploring floating gardens in the sky. And doesn't that just sound like the most wonderful thing? The main activity here is gardening, in which you are growing a magical garden, having to meet the other birds, talking to them and working together to create these beautiful sanctuaries. While you do play as a bird, it appears that there are stamina limits to your flight, so it might be more 3D platformer than you might think, but you are able to use the environmental objects to launch yourself up into the air so that you can glide to get to new locations, looking very pleasant, but again, might be lacking a central narrative. Here's an awesome looking isometric pixel art title named Anode Heart Layer Null, where I thought that the name sounded familiar, and it is indeed from the same developer as Anode Heart, a pixel art monster taming RPG from 2023, which is somewhat of a hidden gem, where the monster taming elements are also somewhat present in this card battling RPG as well. It's a bit meta since you play as Blank, a new player in the dual server having to battle members of a mysterious organization known as the Shadowed in order to climb up the ranks. This is an expanded version of the card minigame from Anode Heart with new booster packs, rebalanced card sets and refurbished rules, and with over 420 cards, 12 levels and a whole lot more, also looking like it should be on the GBA, which makes this a no-brainer pick. Speaking of monster taming games, a title that looks like one but isn't is the Edge of Allegoria, a turn-based RPG where you are fighting monsters, Dragon Warrior style, but self-describes as being no kids game. There is certainly an edge to this game, but whether it works for the game or not, we wouldn't know until it releases, in which our hero is exploring the world of Allegoria and fighting monsters and enemies here. You can kill monsters and harvest their body parts for financial gain, can level up, find and equip a variety of weapons to use on your enemies and more, having an interesting skill and equipment mastery system where the more you use something, the better you get at it, and with over 80 skills to learn, and almost 150 pieces of equipment will give you plenty of options in combat. The world of Allegoria is also home to a cast of colourful characters, each with their own personalities and quirks, which, mixed in with the coarse language mentioned earlier, does give the game a little bit more flavour. There is some eldritch cosmic horror thing going on as well, with a story buried under layers of madness and debauchery, certainly standing out in a crowded field. Of course, the almost original Pokemon Red/Blue kind of aesthetic is also excellent, making me pretty excited for this game. A gorgeous music-themed platformer is Symphonia, where music is the very essence of life and energy. However, the founders of the world and their orchestra have vanished, which has led to the inhabitants becoming divided, resulting in a world that is slowly succumbing to silence. Use the power of your violin and your platforming skills to gather a new orchestra in order to bring the musical machinery of the world back to life. I'm not a music person, so don't ask me about the difference between a chord and a treble clef, although I can answer that with Google, but you don't need to be musically inclined to enjoy this beautiful game, of which the soundtrack and music take center stage. It is designed as a non-violent platformer, so there is no combat here, only challenging platforming sections, which I'm sure will have its own progression and unlocks as well, but seems like a linear level-based title. I know that a few of you are very excited for this based on your comments, so if you trust your fellow indie game fans, be sure to wishlist the game. I last mentioned Klekka during the Steam Next Festival, where this refers to itself as Eastern European Lethal Company, being a 4-player co-op horror title that is very weird in its own way. For one, the goal is to feed an elevator that is trying to eat you, satiating its hunger so that it takes you deeper and deeper downwards into the giga structure. This location is filled with anomalies that will kill you, so it's a desperate scramble to fan out and explore to get both organic and inorganic matter to feed to the elevator, having to hightail back to the elevator when a siren sounds, which indicates the approach of an all-killing anomaly named Samus Ball with a throwback PS1 era art style and the intentional 4x3 resolution adding to the presentation of this game. From the developer of Atom RPG comes Sword Haven Iron Conspiracy, set in a low-magic medieval fantasy world in contrast with its Fallout 1 and 2 inspired earlier game. However, in a similar way, this is a CRPG or computer RPG, a party-based title with turn-based combat, and you can see a little bit of a trend here with Dustgrave and Urban Strife covered earlier in this video. You play as a lonely adventurer landing on a new unexplored land of Nova Draconia, but during your voyage was handed a peculiar artifact by a dying man which is the catalyst for the adventure of a lifetime. This is inspired by the Infinity Engine CRPGs of Baldur's Gate 1 and Icewind Dale in particular, so if you have any nostalgia for those, this is one to watch, and if you're not old like me and don't know them, you can check out the remastered versions of the classics, or give this new entry a try next month. Alright, here's one of the weirder and more interesting looking games of the month in The Spirits of the Samurai, a side-scrolling action-adventure title that stars not one but three protagonists in a human samurai, a Kodama, which is the blue alien-looking spirit creature in the trailer, as well as a cat, in their attempt to fight against an army of undead warriors and Japanese monsters. The samurai part I get, since that is similar to Track to Yomi, with the cat appearing to be more platforming and stealth focused, and the Kodama part does include combat as well. But the small spirit has to fight enemies that are appropriate for its size rather than the larger, more monstrous enemies. The most interesting part of this game is the stop-motion style animation, which gives it a very cool look and feel, although hopefully that will not throw off the combat by too much. The developer talks about some amount of Metroidvania elements but did not elaborate, so I'm putting this as an action platformer for now, and we'll have to find out more when it releases. A game with a little bit of an attitude is Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop. Since the press releases that I've received about this game are expletive-laden, being a roguelite puzzle title in which you play as a mechanic struggling to make ends meet, having to repair enough procedurally generated spaceships to pay the rent. Otherwise, our hero gets horrifically killed but somehow lives to try again in that roguelite fashion. This looks like keep talking and nobody explodes, but as a roguelite, since the ships are procedurally generated and you don't know what needs to be fixed until you take a look, having to reference a manual in order to solve the problem. There is of course a time pressure in how quickly you can fix it, using the excess money to purchase upgrades for the run, and will still have to cough up the rent. As such, it is one of the more unique titles that I have come across and could be very cool indeed. Alright, here is that Game of the Year contender that I was talking about. Since like Pizza Tower last year, there is a tremendous amount of hype behind this Wario Land inspired platformer named Anton Blast. Your booze has been stolen by Satan, so you go into hell to destroy it with your hammer, and that is pretty much it in terms of story setup, having very exaggerated character designs and animations, and kind of reminds me of Cow and Chicken. It was initially planned for release in November, but got delayed due to hurricanes, and given that this developer is friends with the Pizza Tower people, and they have shared builds and received feedback from the playtests, it should be a great one of these. Watch this video for the best games of 2023.